The story of Upper Deck is one of my favorite stories of the baseball card hobby of all time. But before I tell that, I want to talk about a provocative statement, which is in doing this research, I came to think that Topps baseball cards were intentionally bad until Upper Deck came along, and I'll explain that in just a minute. So in 1987, Paul Sumner, who worked in the printing industry for a color separation house for Architectural Digest, had to go into a baseball card shop to buy some baseball cards for his son's birthday party that he was attending. He went into Bill Hemrick's baseball card shop in Anaheim, California, which was called Upper Deck Card Shop. And when he looked at the cards, he was underwhelmed by the quality. He felt like he basically asked him, why do baseball cards look so bad? Because he knew there were better printing techniques available than what he was seeing in the baseball cards that he was buying. And after talking about this for some time, they actually had the idea of maybe they should make a higher quality, better baseball card. Around the similar time frame as Paul and Bill were talking about this, Anaheim Angels pitcher Dwayne Buse was waiting for Chinese food in the same strip mall that the Upper Deck Card Shop was located. And to kill time, he went into the Upper Deck Card Shop and I basically asked, "Where's my rookie card?" And so he and Bill Hemrick struck up a conversation and a relationship as well. And ultimately, the three of them decide to start a business of premium baseball cards called the Upper Deck Baseball Card Company. They quickly realized that they didn't have a lot of business experience, and one of Paul Sumner's boss's acquaintances was Richard McWilliam, who had recently sold his own accounting firm and had agreed to fund the Upper Deck baseball card interest with $2.4 million of his own money. So Richard McWilliam became the CEO and was responsible for funding. Dwayne Buse was responsible for Major League Baseball licensing and gain the Upper Deck Company exposure into how to make that happen. Obviously, Bill Hemrick owned the Upper Deck Card Shop, where the name came from, and Paul Sumner would be in charge of printing. Now, there's two really important business lessons that I've learned from this. One is anyone can have an idea, but you actually have to act on it. And just imagine these four men going against, basically they were the David going against Goliath of Topps baseball cards at the time. And I think number two is the market disruption often comes from outside of the market. So Paul Sumner wasn't that into baseball cards at the time. He wasn't that familiar with them, but he was familiar with printing, and he realized the baseball cards could be made a lot better. So here is a sheet of the prototype baseball cards they first made, which is of Dwayne Buse and Wally Joyner of the Anaheim Angels. And we talk about David and Goliath. Topps had really dominated baseball cards since 1952, and these are some of the estimated sales of Topps, Donruss, and Fleer baseball cards in 1990 up to 1998. And we'll come back to that in just a second, but you can tell Topps is basically the runaway market leader at the time. So in order to compete with Topps, Upper Deck had a couple of maybe three key points. One is they were going to use premium cardstock, and this is from Paul Sumner and his idea about having really premium, glossy, high gloss cards and images. Now, this actually wasn't new to the hobby. Since 1984, Topps was making Tiffany cards. And so if you're not familiar, Topps sold regular baseball cards, and then in what they called the collector's edition set, where you'd buy a complete set, Topps had printed on a much higher quality cardstock with a glossy finish to the front of the cards called Tiffany. And you can tell some of the difference on the front of the cards, but mostly when you turn the back, you can see how clean and white and pristine the printing is on the Tiffany card there on the bottom versus the stock card on the top. So Topps was familiar with this technology and was even making it for these collector's editions, but their base cards were kind of the cheaper regular cardstock that Paul Sumner saw and was unimpressed with at the time. So the third business lesson is don't wait for your competition before you upgrade your own product, because Topps could have done the Tiffany version as their base product all along. Their second pillar to kind of take over the baseball card industry was to have really high quality photos. And so you can see here the triple exposure Nolan Ryan pitch baseball card, this Omar Vizquel card, the kind of artistic angle that the photos were taken. And then you can see the photos, high quality photos, not only the front and the back of cards. And so when you look at the back of cards, this was really a novelty in the baseball card industry at the time, that you really saw a front and a back card of the action of baseball, and it really stood out in the market when this was launched. The other thing that Paul Sumner brought from his printing experience was anti-counterfeit holograms. So he was very familiar with holograms in the market to really revolutionize the authenticity of baseball cards. So they really had opted to embed state-of-the-art security holograms onto every card. The high cost of doing this at the time, the scarcity, and the near impossibility of replicating it ensured a lot of the authenticity, integrity of Upper Deck cards, and really elevated the card's premium positioning, because using this higher-end cardstock and these holograms, the cards were going to be more expensive. And then what I also like is they actually leaned into the hologram and had hologram stickers as part of their initial offering in the set. So it was kind of a fun way to take a unique technology that they were using, not just for anti-counterfeiting, but then to use it for fun decals and stickers like that. And I remember those distinctly from when I was a kid. They also launched with tamper-evident foil packs. And so if you're familiar with the wax packs of the days, they were actually pretty easy to open and reseal. And if you're interested in high-end cards like the 1986 Fleer basketball set with the Jordan rookie, unfortunately, there's a lot of scammers out there who are going through the cards, taking out the good ones, including the Jordan rookies, and resealing them and selling the packs for a lot of money because everyone's looking to hit a Jordan rookie. And so what's really nice about what Upper Deck did in 1989 was coming out with these very tamper-evident foil packs that would be very hard to reseal or to even make it look like it was still sealed. The next thing that the four partners did for Upper Deck is they actually hired their first employee. And so Tom Geideman was a 17-year-old who had just graduated high school but worked in the Upper Deck card shop. And he was known for spotting rookies that were going to stand out kind of ahead of the time. And so he was a little bit famous for stocking up on rookies that people had overlooked, and then a year or two later selling them when the players started popping and doing really well. So Tom Geideman, at only 17, 18 years old, was given a lot of degrees of freedom with the design of the set. They basically said, design the card set. And so his first task was to pick out what was the first card. Now at the time, Topps had used the lower numbers, such as card number 1 through 100 of a set, for the biggest stars in the game. But Tom Geideman decided that rookies should be the start of the set. And so there's 26 rookies to start the 1989 Upper Deck set, and he had to pick which one he was going to give the card number 1 to. Now, the most obvious solution at the time was to go with Greg Jeffries. He was a 2-time Baseball America Minor League Player of the Year and an upcoming rookie prospect who was likely going to be in the majors in 1989. But Tom Geideman thought that was actually too obvious of a choice. The next best choice would have been Sandy Alomar Jr., who had been a AAA star at the time, or Gary Sheffield, who was a AA star at the time. But kind of true to Tom Geideman's reputation for overlooked rookies, he went with Ken Griffey Jr. as the number 1 card for the set, who Ken Griffey Jr. just 2 years earlier was the number 1 draft pick, and he was a single A star, but even Tom Geideman didn't think that Ken Griffey Jr. would make the majors in 1989. He thought he could be a potential September call-up at the end of the season, and then be a well-known rookie or a chase card at that point. But as luck would have it, Ken Griffey Jr. actually made the Mariners team on opening day, and Tom Geideman's pick of putting him in pick card number 1 was just one of the most amazing decisions this young teenager made. So Ken Griffey Jr. is now going to be the first card printed of the first edition of the 1989 Upper Deck of these premium baseball cards. And one of the fun facts that I learned in doing this research is that since Ken Griffey Jr. had not played a single major league game at this point, the Anaheim Angels photographer also happened to be the Sports Illustrated photographer for the West Coast and had covered Ken Griffey Jr.'s minor A team, the San Bernardino Spirit. So on the left here, you can see is the picture that he took of Ken Griffey Jr. in his San Bernardino Spirit uniform, and then that was airbrushed to look like the Seattle Mariners uniform, and became the most iconic baseball card of all time, with the same image that he took here. The 1989 Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. card has often been called the last iconic baseball card. I'm not sure that I can think of one more iconic since then. And part of the reason I wanted to make this video was to really tell the tale of how impactful this set was in changing the hobby. And there's data to back it up. So it's not just because I think it. It's actually the 1989 Upper Deck Ken Griffey is the most graded baseball card of all time, with over 100,000 copies being graded by PSA, BGS, SGC, and so forth. Interestingly enough, Ken Griffey's Topps card is number 2, his Fleer card is number 3, and his Donruss is number 7 most graded cards of all time. So this card really did change the game, and is really the first card I think anyone has to have in their current collection. But another thing that Tom Geideman brought as a teenager to Upper Deck was a lot of fun. And I love this picture that I found of them having a great time and everything. But let me give you an example. So Tom Geideman he had a lot of control over the cards and the images he was picking. So when he saw the player photographs, he chose this Nolan Ryan one throwing a football, which stood out as being different. This is the 1990 card he chose for Bill Buckner. If you know, Bill Buckner was famous for the 1986 World Series and letting the ball go through his legs. So kind of to be funny, when he saw this one, he said he had to do that. And it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of card that he chose. The other thing is that Tom Geideman was an Anaheim Angels fan, and so apparently did not like the Los Angeles Dodgers. And so for the first inaugural year, the 1989 Upper Deck, card number 666 he gave to Kirk Gibson for his World Series moment the year before. And actually, a Dodger was card number 666 for every year after that. So that was a little bit of the fun tradition that he brought to Upper Deck. The other thing that I think is amazing is what I recall about the 1989 Upper Deck set is how it has this first baseline, and you can see the position of Ken Griffey Jr. in the top right-hand corner. Outfield is actually represented by first base. But I wanted to show that they actually had a 3-year design in mind when they launched this. And so the 1990 set had the position of the player as second base in the top left corner. And then the 1991 set had their position in the bottom left corner as third base, and they brought in home plate. So all 3 of these years were really brought together to create a full baseball diamond. And I think that's just a lot of fun. There's a lot of interest and lore in how well they thought out the initial baseball card set and then the first 3 years to create a design like this. And all of this worked. So Topps obviously was dominant since 1952, but Upper Deck, when they launched, they got a fair share of the market in their first year, and the interest in Upper Deck only grew. Now, Upper Deck was a private company, and so while we did have public information of Topps because it was a public company, we have estimates of the Upper Deck sales, and it really looks like for a while there, Upper Deck became the number one sports card manufacturer of the 1990s, um, and really disrupted the market in a huge way. The other thing interesting to know is that the Upper Deck card sets for baseball became the card set of the year in 1989 when they launched, and every year for the next 15 years in a row. So when you really think about David versus Goliath, when Upper Deck launched and Topps was the number one, Upper Deck came in with just this great premium quality product, and they charged a premium price for it. So to do all this, they charged, I think it was $1 per pack, when Topps was in the 35 cents to 50 cents per pack range. And in the first year, because of so much demand, actually Upper Deck had sold out a bunch of packs, and they were hard to find. I remember this. So as a kid, I remember paying $1.25 a pack, but there are stories of Upper Deck cards that first year going for $2 or $3 a piece in baseball card shops because they were so hard to get and in so much demand. And Upper Deck made such a splash that in 2006, when Major League Baseball Players Association decided to shorten the list of people that they gave their licensing arrangements to, they only chose Upper Deck and Topps going forward in 2006. And so Upper Deck not only made a big splash, but really was seen as one of the top two baseball card companies at the time. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. So let's go back to 1989. When Tom Geideman chose Ken Griffey Jr. to be the number one card, what that meant on the printing sheets, and baseball cards are printed in these large sheets, Upper Deck had 10 by 10, so there would be 100 cards on a sheet. Ken Griffey Jr.'s was in the top left corner. And what this meant was many times that card was damaged or cut improperly because of its location on the sheet. And being a premium product, Upper Deck actually launched with a policy that if a customer found a damaged card or a card that was in poor condition in the pack, they would replace it. And so many Ken Griffey Jr. cards were returned, and as a result, Upper Deck would print more cards and replace them. It is also rumored that to meet this demand, Upper Deck printed entire sheets of just Ken Griffey Jr.'s rookie card on a 10 by 10, so 100 at a time, similar to what Fleer did with the Billy Ripken 1989 Billy Ripken error card. So when they corrected the error card with the black box over the swear word on his bat, they printed entire sheets of those cards. It is rumored that Upper Deck did that with Ken Griffey Jr. There's some controversy around that, as other manufacturers were kind of saying that Upper Deck was cheating and reprinting in their very first year. I think it's hard to say of like when is a card reprinted. Like if you print them all the first year, is that really reprinting them? So I think that's some of the controversy of what they were doing at the time. But Upper Deck didn't stop innovating there. In 1990, they were the first manufacturer to have an autograph insert and serial numbered card randomly inserted into the packs as sort of a chase card. And so they had a marketing campaign called Find the Reggie, which was one of the most successful promotions of Upper Deck at the time. And this triple portrait card where Reggie Jackson hand signed and hand numbered them up to 2,500 was one of the most iconic images among baseball card collectors, especially for autograph cards at the time. So now in 1991, Topps is beginning to feel some competition from Upper Deck. It's obviously working in the market at what Upper Deck is doing. So Topps chooses to come out with their own premium card set, which they called Topps Stadium Club. So they used that kind of Tiffany premium stock quality baseball card with what they deemed as premium photography. Now, for me personally, I kind of think this missed the mark because I'm really not interested in Nolan Ryan in a suit or Jeff Bagwell standing next to the bleachers. I think these don't have as much personality as some of the Upper Deck cards that I called out. But it is interesting that they had higher quality photos. They branded as part of a co-branding with Kodak. And they also had gold foil print on the Stadium Club logo in the bottom left corner. So certainly these cards are premium cardstock, high quality photo images, artistic images, and on that like more Tiffany premium glossy photo appearance. But my fourth business lesson from this is what I don't like is that Topps didn't do this to their main cards. They actually launched a separate set, and so in a way they reinforced that Topps's cards are inferior to Upper Deck, and to be equal to Upper Deck, you have to buy the premium Topps version, whereas Upper Deck every card was considered premium. So I think it would have been better for Topps to just move at this point to their Tiffany printing, which they'd done all along, even if they had to raise prices. But they tried to do it with Stadium Club. From what I understand, Topps Stadium Club only lasted for 2 years. In 1992, actually, sorry, this is 1991, Upper Deck scooped everybody again with its first Michael Jordan baseball card. Now, Michael Jordan did take a year off from basketball and play baseball, but that was 1994. That's when his Upper Deck baseball cards came out. But this is interesting because for one game on July 25th of 1990, before the White Sox Cleveland Indians game, Michael Jordan took batting practice and apparently hit 2 home runs into the quote-unquote Upper Deck. I just love how Upper Deck put that in the back of their card. And they took advantage of this opportunity to make a baseball card for Michael Jordan, this is his first baseball card 3 years before Michael Jordan actually really had minor league baseball cards printed for him as he tried to make Major League Baseball. In 1992, Topps kind of gave in and moved their base product onto the higher quality premium Tiffany. They moved away from the gray cardboard to this premium white with a little bit of the glossy. They also coincidentally dropped the gum from their packs in 1992. So now they have a premium pro quality product again, in line with Upper Deck, I would say, ish. And it took them, if you think about this, 3 years to respond to what Upper Deck did when they launched. So Upper Deck continued to innovate, and in 1993, they launched Upper Deck SP, which was another premium offering. And what I love about these cards is how there's no border, and that the images go straight to the edge to give a really premium look. They have their gold foil of the SP logo in the corner there. And when you look at the action photos that they're selecting, especially of Griffey in the outfield here from 93 and 94, these are just awesome artistic quality cards. And then the 1993 Upper Deck SP Derek Jeter might be Derek Jeter's most famous and popular rookie card of all time. In 1994, Upper Deck brought die cut to cards, and so this is the way they would actually cut different shapes of their cards. So rather than just a rectangle, you can see they start to shape them, which is actually pretty cool. And when you're going through a stack of cards, like you're ripping some foil packs, the die cut cards really stick out, and you got a special insert. And in 1996, Upper Deck brought SPX, which was branded as SP to the X degree, and it was a 60 card set. And man, I love the chutzpah of Upper Deck when we talk about this, but they had sort of this hologram, I think they call it hollow view look to them, and they were short printed. But here's the wild part is there was only one card per pack, and the packs cost $3. So I love that they're die cut with the hologram, and they're really amazing. But I know I personally, as a kid at that time, didn't buy any of these, likely because of the price point. They're so expensive, but they're really fancy looking cards. In 1997, Upper Deck was credited with bringing the first game-used jerseys onto cards. And so they did it here with the Ken Griffey Jr. card. There was a Tony Gwynn card, and I understand there was a Ray Ordonez card that had game-used jerseys on them. And so this is just, I love patches on cards now. And so I just love Upper Deck is really continuing to push the industry forward, not only from their initial launch and their plan, but each year afterwards. They really brought competition to the hobby. And in 1997, Upper Deck was credited with popularizing the one-of-one cards, often the logo men. I didn't find any great examples of these in baseball. If you have any, let me know. But certainly in basketball, we're all familiar with these one-of-one logo man cards that Upper Deck brought. And, thinking about a card that there's only one printed of is just mind-boggling. But these are actually some of the most valuable cards of all time. So this 2003 LeBron James one-of-one logo man autograph card is worth an estimated $4.3 million today. And it just shows kind of the impact that Upper Deck made to the hobby as a whole. I think in somewhat response to these SPX cards, Upper Deck chose to make what's called UD Choice cards, which in 1999 was a 155 card set and was designed to be a lower price point and kind of considered like the cards for kids. So I like the idea because when you think about all the premium cards, especially getting to SPX where it's $3 for one card, there is a loss of like, what about kids just collecting cards and having cheaper cards? So these were cheaper offerings for kids. However, this is the only year that they did this. It didn't last long, and they moved their lower priced offering to Upper Deck MVP from here out. So from 1999 to 2005, the low price offering of baseball cards from Upper Deck was called Upper Deck MVP. And you can see they brought back the white border. It's not as nice as, print to the edge and so forth. But great for kids and a low price offering from, probably the most premium brand in sports cards at the time. In 2005, Upper Deck bought Fleer, which I actually didn't know until I did this research. But it's kind of a sad story of Fleer. And so doing a little digging, Marvel Entertainment purchased Fleer in 1992 for $540 million. And Marvel also bought Skybox at the time. But Marvel had some problems. They actually entered bankruptcy in 1996. The Fleer business was hurt by the 1994 Major League Baseball card strike and so forth. And so through bankruptcy, Marvel was placed on the market at an asking price of only $30 million. But as they got out of bankruptcy, Upper Deck was actually able to buy it for what I understand was like $5 million. So kind of a steal. Actually, it was $6.1 million. So kind of a steal. But I don't think they really did too much with Fleer. I know they brought back some Flair brands for basketball cards, but they did win the liquidation and they bought Fleer. I should probably do a separate video of the rise and fall of Fleer because they were making baseball cards in the 1950s right next to Topps before they gave in to Topps at that time. Through my research, I also found that in 2007, when Topps was up for sale, that Upper Deck made an offer to buy Topps. This would have been phenomenal for Upper Deck had this gone through. But as you know from my previous video on the history of Topps, in 2007, the former Disney CEO Michael Eisner and his company purchased Topps. I think it was around for $360 million at the time in 2007. And we're going to talk about why that was so important in just a minute here. But if Upper Deck was in the bidding, they would rue the day that they didn't raise their bid to get Topps. Because shortly thereafter, in 2009, Topps became the exclusive baseball card of Major League Baseball, landing a huge blow to Upper Deck and cutting Upper Deck out of the baseball card business, which is really kind of the end of the story from a baseball card standpoint for Upper Deck. But the news kind of gets worse. So in 2010, after they lost baseball, they also lost the NBA, NFL, World of Warcraft, for whatever that's worth. And in 2010, Upper Deck was really focusing on NHL, Marvel, and some other small entertainment products that they had licensed as well. So it's hard times now for Upper Deck when you are losing some of the biggest franchises in sports cards altogether, and you don't have the rights to produce baseball, football, or basketball cards. And then in 2010, Upper Deck also got lost a lawsuit to Konami Entertainment, who owned the Yu-Gi-Oh brand. And again, I don't claim to know much about Pokemon and these Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but in that lawsuit, Upper Deck admitted to counterfeiting hundreds of thousands of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. From reading it, I thought it seemed like Upper Deck really believed they had the rights and permission to produce the cards, but through this lawsuit, Upper Deck was permanently barred from acting as an authorized distributor of Yu-Gi-Oh trading cards in 2010. Now, we're going to flash forward a little bit here, but you can just see the writing on the wall. This is the beginning of the end for Upper Deck. In 2021, Fanatics came in with the surprise monopoly by working directly with Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association to be the only player to make sports cards for Major League Baseball. They actually then locked down football, basketball, and now, I believe, hockey as well. So Fanatics has the monopoly on baseball, and so everybody's kind of locked out. I can go a little more detail into how Michael Rubin kind of made this happen and some of the things that he did, but basically his pitch to the Major League Baseball Players Association was that they would cut out the middlemen, who were the card distributors who basically bought directly from manufacturers like Topps, marked up the products, and then resold them to the hobby shops, and 80% of the market went through these distributors. And so by cutting them out, the manufacturers would make more money, the hobby shops would get products at a lower cost, and then they also promised Major League Baseball the chance to make money off of resold cards through online auction site and an online marketplace that Fanatics is going to build. And so it's sort of like how Spotify took over the music industry. They offered more money to Major League Baseball and Major League Baseball Players Association than what Topps was offering, and became the monopoly. So in fact, Topps was forced to sell to Fanatics. Topps couldn't make cards for baseball without being part of Fanatics. And in 2022, Fanatics bought Topps for $500 million, which was actually quite a deal or a discount from the value of Topps at the time, but Topps wasn't authorized to make baseball cards. And if I go to a current even news just from this year, while Upper Deck couldn't make basketball cards for quite some time, Upper Deck still had an exclusive license with LeBron James for collectibles and autographs and things like that. But even this year, LeBron James left Upper Deck and signed an exclusive deal with Fanatics, kind of continuing Fanatics' monopoly in the sports card business, and came out with this LeBron James, Bronny James autograph card through Topps/Bowman Chrome. So we are now heavily in the Fanatics era for sports cards. My thoughts on this is I'm not sure where this is going to go. I feel like you can see through this video the competition that Upper Deck brought to even Topps really changed the game for the market and brought a lot more excitement to us in the hobby, and that a monopoly may be less inclined to do so. And for example, Topps was making likely subpar cards than their Tiffany cards for decades, until Upper Deck kind of forced them to do it. But I also think that at the end of the day, most of the cards that I'm interested in collecting and the cards that I'm buying and selling have already been made. And so I really focus on vintage cards, and the new cards Fanatics is going to produce in 2025 and beyond aren't likely to be a big part of what I'm interested in the hobby. So I can't say I'm that worried about it. But we will see. We'll find out together. And of course, this is a production of the Sports Cards Edge. Our goal is to help give you an edge making money with sports cards. If you got any value out of this, please give us a like and a follow. We really appreciate it. Subscribe there. And then I also want to give some acknowledgement to the sources of information that I used to put this together, including articles from Forbes, the San Diego Tribune, GPT, Wikipedia. Baseball Cardpedia is awesome, and the Upper Deck website itself for the history of Upper Deck. Thank you so much for watching.